All right. Um, I'm Chad Melis with Turn It Up, and you're here with Craft Beer Professionals for my presentation on the art and science of media relations. We'll start slow here this morning, give people time to join and get up to speed on their morning coffee. But I'll get rolling with a little bit of an introduction to myself and to Turn It Up, which is my company. So I've been in the craft beer industry for a little over 15 years. I founded Turn It Up Media 4 years ago, and we're, I guess, what you would call a full service marketing agency. We focus on the beverage space, so that's craft beer, distilleries. We also collaborate with cannabis companies and outdoor companies as well. So what we do is a mix of the entire marketing mix. And the reason I bring this up is because I believe what makes us unique is our experience on the brand building side of the desk, as opposed to just being a graphic designer or just being a media relations person. We really pride ourselves on our experience building brands and, again, kind of being on the other side of the desk, managing budgets and how we're going to go to market. So all that being said, I'll talk about our services a little bit because it really is kind of an order of events on how you go to market and utilize media relations. So we do brand identity, which means we really dive down into the core tenets of a brand, what you stand for, and allows you to make decisions and be intentional with how your brand is represented in the market. Once we have all of that really well aligned, and you know how to make those decisions, how to speak to the audience, who your audience is, all of those things, then we transition into content creation. And that is making sure that your photography, your videography, your copy, all of those things represent your brand identity effectively, so you can go to market with consistency and really translate to the consumer. Once you have all of your content in place, how are you going to take that to market? Is that retail activation or retail program? How are you going to apply that to social media? Again, I think this is one area that sets us apart from a typical, design agency. We do have a lot of experience going to market. And then in the end here today, once you have all of those things aligned, you can really get to the megaphone, if you will, of your brand and utilize the media to help tell your story and utilize that content and get those narratives out there and help grow your brand. So that's what Turn It Up does. That's part of our vision of how we help people get to market and what role media relations plays in that. So hopefully, again, people are grabbing their coffee and joining in, and I'll get into a little bit more context about where I came from and where I guess, developed and learned the art and science of media relations. So I spent 10 years leading marketing at Oskar Blues Brewery. I know there's going to be a lot of people in the audience that are a mix of small breweries, mid-sized breweries, and some large breweries. I want you to know that when I started at Oskar Blues, I was the 5th employee. We were a small brewery in the town of Lyons, Colorado, which is a town of 2,000 people. So we really did start, with that handful of people doing everything mentality. And I think the intention of this presentation is applicable to everybody from, the smallest of breweries to the largest of breweries, really. And from Oskar Blues, we continued to grow. And I was a marketing director in the development of the Canarchy Craft Brewery Collective. Again, as I mentioned, we started with 5. I started as like the 5th employee at Oskar Blues. And when I left Canarchy, we had 850 employees. We had taken beer to 50 states and 17 countries. And I realized that I learned a heck of a lot on that journey. So with all that being said, I'm going to get into the art and science of media relations. I'll give a couple examples of some coverage that we saw during my time at Oskar Blues and at Canarchy to introduce some of the narratives and give a little bit of context before we dive into some of the X's and O's of how you can do it yourself. In 2005, the New York Times named Dale's Pale Ale the top American pale ale. At that time, again, Oskar Blues was very small. We've been canning beer for just a couple of years, and craft beer in a can was a joke. We were getting laughed out of liquor stores and bars all throughout our home state of Colorado, much less anywhere else. And when this article came out, which I did not get this placement, but it was very impactful on me at the time. Marty Jones was the guy who was leading PR with Dale Katechis at Oskar Blues, and this was a huge hit. And that, again, we were being laughed out of liquor stores and bars. And once the New York Times said that Dale's Pale Ale is the top American craft or top American pale ale, and that it comes in a can, and it talked about all the things that we were yelling about in the market. It's better for the beer. It eliminates light, eliminates oxygen. It keeps beer fresher longer. All of those things. Suddenly, when the New York Times said it, it was more credible, and people in the market started to listen. So that third-party confirmation was something that I learned very early on and was super impactful and really changed the direction of Oskar Blues. Another example is in 2010, Advertising Age named Dale's Pale Ale one of America's hottest brands. We were on there with Gillette and some of the other largest brands in America. And we were able to really share that with the distributor and retail channel and earn share of mind and get them on board to helping us get to market. In 2012, in a much different way than that national narrative, we opened up a brewery in the small town of Brevard, North Carolina, and realized the importance of local media and just being involved in your community. Craft beer is a very local and community-driven business, which is why I love it. So, from large national narratives to small town local media, each one can play a role in what you do. And again, in 2015, Oskar Blues again expanded and went to Austin, Texas. We had multiple home markets. We had distribution in all 50 states, and the balance between national trends and national narratives and local values was a key ingredient in us going to market and letting people know what we were all about. Again, just some tidbits on what I learned in 2015. Oskar Blues and Perrin Brewing Company in Michigan came together, and again, here you see we really wanted to take craft collaboration to the next level. I think making sure that narrative is out there and controlling, being proactive about what that message is and what those intentions were, and being transparent about how both breweries could benefit was helpful for us. If that had just happened and we allowed people to make up their own narratives, certainly some different storylines would have come out. In 2017, Canarchy Craft Brewery Collective was born, and we utilized Forbes to help tell that message and show how that form of collaboration was going to get to the next level. So those are all examples of success that we had along the way. There were some failures as well, but I think it's a relatable narrative and shows how media relations can help. And now that we have those in place, let's look at how we can help everyone on this call get to market. So what we're going to look at here today are a couple different sections. We're going to start with strategy, just having a plan in place. From there, we'll go and look at media lists, like who are you going to send this to? Narratives, how can you determine what will be picked up, what won't be, and how do you deliver that? Relationships, you have a media list, but how do you cultivate a relationship so that people listen when you do reach out? And then tactics, again, in detail how you reach out to those folks, and then results. Hey, we have a media win. What can we do with that to really maximize its impact? So we'll start here in the strategy section. It's not the most exciting of ideas, and we may get some moans and groans based on the time of year that it is, but I think a lot of successful earned media can come from having your internal priorities well aligned and having an annual business plan. It doesn't matter if you're 2 employees, 5 employees, 850 employees. Plotting the plan for your year gives you a great roadmap. It's a good gut check going on. It can align your team, and it can be a great reference throughout the year. That doesn't mean you can't adjust, but when you make those adjustments, everybody is coming from the same point of reference, and you can tweak it and find how to take advantage of those opportunities. If all you're doing is chasing opportunities and not everybody's aligned on where you're at, it can get to be a little bit chaotic. So just identify, what brands are a priority? What big events are you going to? Do you have retail activations? Do you have new brands coming out through innovation? Are you planning to go to any new markets? Just get everybody aligned. From there, we can put that in a month-by-month calendar, and we can align those priorities with the editorial calendar of publications you really want to be in. You can put those against cultural events. You can look at, seasonal beers. What's going to be a national trend? When will people be talking about that? And then, looking at holidays. Obviously, those impact beer sales. We're talking about Memorial Day, 4th of July, the major holidays. So those are big drinking times, and also occasion-based opportunities to reach out to media. So finally, we start talking about media relations. We'll talk about how to identify your narrative, what you want to say, when you want to say it, who you're going to talk to. Let's, identify what media segment, and then again, tactics, how we're going to reach out to those folks. So on the strategy side, I think it all goes back to really understanding what your year looks like, aligning it as best you can against what the media landscape looks like, so that you can maximize them at the right time. And then again, we all know opportunity comes up and you have to adjust, but you're all coming from the same place. So from there, we go to, who are we going to reach out to? I'm starting from nothing. I have no media contacts, and this is a place that I started. We had PR help with Marty Jones at Oskar Blues when I went there, and he moved on, and I had to take the lead there. I did not have a media list. I literally started from scratch, and I did exactly what this says here. I reached out to the Brewers Association. They have media lists available. I think they have it annually. If not, it's biannually. I'm not exactly sure. But the Brewers Association is a great place to start. If you're a member of your local Brewers Guild, again, they may have a list that they can share with you of relevant media contacts. If you sponsor events, you have an opportunity to help promote their event by reaching out to media. Often they have a media list because they have, they want media to be able to get a VIP badge or a media badge to come in, and you can access those lists. Those are all great places to start. Once you have that, you can Google and really hone in on who you want to target. Of course, Google also helps with ongoing list maintenance. People move around all the time, and you have to spend some time keeping that up to date. But that being said, I think it's important to know, as you're building your list, don't just make one spreadsheet and there's people spread all around. Try to create some organization. Try to think ahead about what narratives you would want to put out there, where you would want to see that, and create segmentation in your list and organization in your list so that you can pitch the right people, the right narrative at the right time. So, geography, your really local contacts versus, if you're in multiple states, by state could be good, or industry. We really want to talk to industry. We want to earn share of mind with our distributors, versus consumer, where you're really trying to drive brand awareness and get the product in front of those folks. Business is on here as well. Do you have a very intriguing founder story, or are you looking to raise some funds? Activation in that business space can be used for a lot of different ways. So as you're acquiring people, I think there is a lot of value in making sure that you segment them appropriately, because you'll want to be targeting the right people with the right message later, and we'll talk about that. So you have your media list together. The next step is really identifying the narratives that you want to reach out on. One good thing I like to say here, it's like if you're sitting at Red Rocks and there is somebody in front of you talking about your brewery, what would you want them to say? I think that's a kind of a fun gut check about some narratives that you would want to see in the consumer facing space. But make sure that these narratives, support your company's goals, that they are newsworthy. Keep in mind, national trends, local trends, what will resonate, and then, geographic relevance. Is it something that is important in your home market? Those things tend to resonate and drive engagement from media contacts. And then occasion-based, that kind of goes back to those holidays, Memorial Day, Labor Day, things like that. So those are big drinking holidays, but they also, you can get ahead of those by pitching for roundups. Hey, 10 beers that you should check out on Memorial Day, things like that. Once you've identified the narrative, it's super important to take some time and really understand what that headline is going to be. You want it to be succinct, you want it to be impactful, you want it to be insightful. You also want it to be on brand. All of those things are super important in communicating with the media contact as quickly as you can. In the headline, it's important to include your brewery name, what the action is of what the outreach explains, and then a descriptor about it. Once you have your headline and it really acts as the hook to gain share of mind with the reporter to continue on and read that release, you can add additional context to that headline with a short intro in your email, if that's the type of outreach that you're doing. It just sets up the press release a little bit, lets them know why you're sending it, and something that should also support your brand story. So that is really trying to identify those narratives and then communicate the value of them through that short to the point headline. It's probably the subject of your email, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. From here, we know what narrative we're going to talk about. We have the headline in place. We have a media list, but you don't send every press release to every contact. It's really important to understand each one of these writers, each one of these media contacts, and understand their outlet, and also understand their audience. Another thing to take into consideration as you're sending to potentially more than one contact is don't ever share an email list as part of your outreach. You can utilize blind copy if you're going to send it to more than one person. Individual pitches are super impactful. And keep in mind, a lot of reporters are getting quite a few pitches per day. So addressing them by their name is super important, and getting to know their audience. So when you do reach out, you know that it's a good fit. When you're just starting up, phone pitches can be effective. You want to reach out to people, introduce yourself, ask them if it's okay to include them in some of these pitches. It's a great way to really start a relationship. Other great ways to do that are to attend industry events. And, if you are attending, you can ask that event for their media list and know who's going to be there, and really try to start an authentic relationship with those individual contacts. But it is important to understand what that writer writes about, the outlet that they represent, and what their audience reads. And it's super important because it's something you have to keep in mind every single time that you reach out to a reporter. You must create value with every second of their time that you take. Again, just going back to making sure that your pitch is a good fit for them and creates value for their reader. Don't waste their time if it's not going to be the right pitch at the right time. They have a tendency not to open your pitches. So creating value with every effort is super important. If they write about events, then you can reach out to them about the free music in their tap room. If they talk about new beer releases, you can get samples to them and talk to them about their new beers. Again, if they're talking about on the business beat, you can talk to them about your new tap room or your expansion plans. But not every narrative is a fit with every writer, and that's super important to keep in mind. The next thing on engaging with media and nurturing these relationships is be super timely. Writers are typically on deadline. They're writing a lot of stories. And if you do have an opportunity to get their attention and they have questions or they need any supporting materials or photos, just be super timely. As I said, they are on deadline. And when they're on deadline and they need something, I want them to think of me and say, man, this deadline is fast approaching. I'm not exactly sure I have everything I need. I'm going to reach out to Chad. And, I think that's a great goal to have, and put yourself in their shoes and understand they're on deadline. So in addition to, these important points, just doing one-off press releases often doesn't necessarily work or translate into immediate results. These relationships are super important, and keeping a cadence of communication with them with valuable information that's relevant to their readers is how not only you grow the relationships, but you get them up to speed on understanding your brand and what you stand for and why it's valuable for them to write about your brewery to their readers. So I can't emphasize that enough, that media relations is not transactional. You don't send a press release and expect coverage. It is relationship based, and you need to create value and opportunities for editorial consideration, as opposed to placing an advertisement, in which case you know what to expect. You can be salesy. One thing of creating value is identifying trends that exist and potentially other breweries that are doing similar things to what you're doing, so that you can demonstrate that a trend is happening and that you are an industry leader. So, being overly salesy doesn't always work as well as creating more general narratives that you can also be seen as an industry leader within. But it's something we'll talk about later. But okay, we've identified who the contact is. We know that our story is a fit for them, and we really want their reader to see it. Now, how are we going to reach out to these contacts? There are a lot of different ways, a lot of different tactics, and we're about ready to send out our first outreach. So a press release, typically is a full narrative. You're launching a new beer, you're opening a new tap room, you have a fundraiser, versus a media alert. And, you might say, well, what's the difference between a press release and a media alert? A media alert often is something that you can identify as you have a time and a place for people to attend. Hey, we just want to let you know that this event or beer launch is happening. We'd like to invite your local news station to come and join. That might be a media alert versus a press release. So just let's keep in mind different verticals, different reporters really mandate different tactics. You have a reporter that lives in New York, you might not want to invite them to your Colorado brewery anniversary. But if they're a national writer, you can offer them samples for on-trend beers or for national roundups. National inclusions can still be leveraged in your local market if you're, not a national brewery. Again, that third-party confirmation is great. So we'll dive more into some of these tactics. Press release versus media alert is the first one. Targeted pitching and embargo. Targeted pitching is you have a narrative, you know exactly who you want to go after. You want this reporter to write this story specifically for their readership. And, you might offer them advanced access to the story. Let them know that you're going to put this press release out in 2 weeks, but you really wanted to give them a jump on it. You feel like it's a great fit for editorial consideration for their readers. And you just, pitch specific contacts. And the idea of the embargo is just making sure that you communicate to them, hey, we are offering this up to you in advance. This press release will go live in 2 weeks. If you have a staggered approach to when you want that to go out, you can communicate the embargo saying, we will make this available to you in advance, but please don't write about it, for 10 days. And we're going to send the press release out in 14 days or however that timing might work out. But targeted pitching and embargo can be super impactful in that you can offer exclusive access to information in advance. It's really great for helping grow those relationships as long as what that writer does for content and that it does create value for their reader. You're a brewery, so your beer really does a lot of the talking for you. Doing sample outreach and getting product in people's fridges and in their hands is a great way to stay top of mind. Even when you're sending out, a press release, maybe a month later, they can be like, oh yeah, I had their Helles and it was clean and amazing and crisp and refreshing. It's just a great way to, again, build relationships and keep your brewery top of mind. I love sample outreach, and I really believe it's super impactful in the space. I would never suggest just randomly sending samples to addresses. Always engage with the writer, make sure that they're interested in the product, and confirm their mailing address. Sending samples takes a lot of time, and just make sure that you've confirmed their interest and their address so you don't end up getting those samples back. Another tactic is, we put on a lot of events, we go to a lot of events, and just inviting people to be part of the event is, again, a great way to that relationship. I think everybody knows the value of your tap room. It's really the cultural hub of your brand. And any time that you can get media to be in your environment and really feel the culture of your brewery and sample those. And there's a ton of value in that. again, going back to, you have a national writer in New York, you might not necessarily want to invite them to your event. But again, you can go back up and look at the sample as a tactic to, earn that kind of larger national inclusion that you can leverage in your local market. Familiarity trips are similar to events, and you can often piggyback them on events, but it's just an opportunity for a writer to come in, engage with your brewery, with your employees, and really, feel that cultural piece. When I was with Oskar Blues, we had a lot of things going on from, the brewery space. We had different restaurants. We had an Hops and Heifers farm at one point where we took a lot of the spent grain and things like that to our farm where we had pigs and cows, and that created inflows into the restaurants. So those were some of the most impactful familiarity trips that we had, and we really tried to align them with other events that were going on. We're fortunate to be in the Front Range of Colorado, so we would have CBC every once in a while had come through. The Great American Beer Festival was an annual event that we could count on, and we put a lot of effort into getting people, from Denver on a familiarity trip to our brewery and really see what we were all about. It really sets a lot of context, again, in that relationship for future outreach. When you're sending a press release, they're like, oh, I get it. I've lived it. I think, again, y'all know the cultural importance of your tap room and of your brewery. And if you can utilize the tactic of a familiarity trip, it's super, super impactful. Okay, so we have identified our narrative. We know who we're going to reach out to, and we know the tactic that we're going to reach out. I think we've pretty much just sent our first press release or our first media alert, which is awesome. I think those are the variables that you can kind of put the science behind it. It's 1 + 1 + 1 is 3. There always is, a little bit of that strategic side of things and identifying those narratives, looking at those editorial calendars and trying to marry those things into a valuable pitch or a valuable headline. So, you can't just use the science. There also is an art. But, once you get these variables aligned through repetition, through listening to what the reporters are engaging in or what they're saying, what they're asking for, you can really gain a lot of experience in knowing, how to select those narratives and how to take them to market. So we've sent the press release, and we're hopeful that we're going to get some results. How do we look at results? What do we do with that information? What is the value of an earned media placement? So to start, I think it's important to monitor the narrative surrounding your brewery. And this is a place to talk about the difference between public relations and media relations. Public relations is any message from anywhere that reaches your audience. So it could be from social media or your website or your newsletter or a paid advertisement. That is very different than, earned media placements. And we truly believe that third-party confirmation has an authentic impact on the reader in a way that's sometimes different than a paid advertisement. That doesn't mean it's better or worse. For paid advertisements, you can be more direct with your message. You can be more forward and salesy. And each one of those plays an important role in the media mix and in the PR mix. But in this instance, monitoring narratives surrounding your brewery, I think you want to take into consideration all of the messages out there, what people are saying on Reddit, what is being shared on social media, and just keep in mind that all of the marketing mix is important, in these results. It's a great way to keep tabs on what people are saying about you. Of course, you're also able to monitor what narratives are working, what reporters are writing about, all of those things on the earned media side as well. But I think it is important to understand that media relations is just one part of the marketing mix. That being said, it's also great to benchmark your competitors. Know what other people are doing in the market and see what people are saying about other breweries. It's a great way to explore and learn in best-in-class examples. Pick a brewery that you look up to, that you think is doing media relations well, or is doing PR well, and look at how they're doing it. I think all of that is super insightful and can really inform how you go to market. So how do you monitor those results beyond just Googling those different breweries or Googling your own brewery? There are a couple free tools in the market that you can utilize that are super effective. Google Alerts are free, and TalkWalker Alerts are free. So Google Alerts, you can go in and set up, again, alerts where you look for your brewery name. You could look for individual brands that you have. You're just setting up search parameters within Google. And when they find it within media, they'll send you an email that says you were mentioned here. As you set those up, there are a couple different settings that you can adjust within it. You can talk about you want only the best results, and you only want them once a day. So you can kind of get pretty granular about it. And, we really open it up. We get all results, and we like to look at it in real time. I think it's super important to understand what people are saying about your brewery, and also see, again, what's winning when you do send out press releases. TalkWalker Alerts are very similar to Google Alerts, but they include a little bit more results from social media shares and social media messaging as well. So if you use those two in tandem, it's a very, very powerful listening tool for your brand. So those are a great place to start when we are talking about what narratives are floating around about your brewery, and understand how you're winning. We'll get into the opportunity of, hey, we had an impactful earned media placement. It's really just the first step. There's a great opportunity. This example is Indeed Brewing. They're a regional brewery in the Midwest. They distribute in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Turn It Up has been working with them for a couple of years. But although they only distribute in 2 states, we're able to get some pretty impactful national placements for them through a lot of the tactics we talked about earlier. And once you do get that placement, it's rad, because they have reach that you don't have. They speak to people that don't follow you on Instagram or Facebook. The reach of something like Men's Journal is super impactful, but it doesn't have to end there. I think leveraging and merchandising earned media is an art form really all to itself, and it really can play a huge role in going back to your understanding your annual business plan and what you want earned media to do for you. Again, understanding that these earned media placements are sometimes with impactful outlets, Men's Journal in this example, the New York Times earlier, Forbes. That is some pretty hefty third-party confirmation that you are doing great things, and that you're creating value and a leader in the space. So merchandising that is super important. There's a lot of different ways that we can do it. I've seen it work in all of these internally, share it with your employees, drive morale and stoke. You have that third shift brewer that's dragging, on the night shift. It's pretty rad to see the beer that they're brewing featured in Men's Journal, so I think it can really be an internal rally cry about, hey, we're doing great things. So don't let that earned media placement only live in the news. Let's take it to our markets and leverage it. So that internal rally cry is super fun. You can also take that and share those placements with your distributors and your retailers. Often, for a brewery, your biggest customer is not necessarily the beer drinker. It is often the distributors that carry your beer. So let's utilize these hits with distributors, with retailers. Let's earn share of mind at that distributor. Let's go out and earn some shelf space. Let's have your sales team or whoever is going out to do samplings. Let's have a little sales sheet that shows people the earned media that you've garnered and that third-party confirmation. So it can work not only internally at the distributor and retailer space, and then of course, let's take that to beer drinkers. Let's share it on our social media, utilize it on our website, through our newsletter, and drive that consumer confidence and brand awareness through that third-party confirmation. It's an authentic and unbiased impact that you can really take to the market. So merchandising and leveraging those media hits is super, super important. I think we're getting really to the end of the slides that I had, and was hopeful that people would send some questions. Looks like we have a few here. Before we jump into that, I think it's super important when you're doing media outreach that you are authentic to your brand and you have fun. When people see and hear and believe your narrative, it's more impactful, and they have a tendency to get on board and want to share that fun and share that impact. And we're all in craft beer. We really at Turn It Up, we really choose to spend our time in craft beer because we love the personalities, the creativity, and the people within it. I think the media also wants to surround themselves with that sort of thing. So in the end, let's be authentic, let's be creative, let's continue to have fun. We love, craft beer. So that being said, we have a couple questions, just trying to look through them here. How frequently should we be sending out news to our list media contacts? Is it every month? Is it every year? I would say kind of going back to trying to create that communications calendar at the beginning of the year so you can align those months and those narratives. And then when we go back to understanding how to cultivate those relationships with each of those media contacts, we touched on having a constant, cadence of communication. We don't want to send them something that doesn't create value for them or something that's not a fit. So we have to, keep that into consideration. But one-off press releases once a year are probably not going to earn you a lot of placements. Building those relationships, keeping them close, having them understand the value you're creating in the marketplace is important. So I don't know that there's necessarily a clear answer to that. Every brewery is unique and different, but you certainly want to try to stay, connected and keep them close. So I don't know there's a clear answer to that. Curious about the value of news versus evergreen stories. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by evergreen stories, if you mean like a paid advertorial, or if you're talking about maybe a white paper or a use case example. Each one of those examples, if that's what you're talking about, can create value in different ways. I think it's important to understand what your goals are and what the intention behind each one of those versions of outreach. I think it really relates to determining what tactic you're going to use as well. Again, here, like, is this a press release? Is it a white paper or a use case example, or a best in class example? Each one of those can be, valuable. And again, it can come down to, do you want to be visible within the industry and seen as an industry leader because you're thinking of maybe going to another state or trying to earn share of mind at the distributor, or even raise some capital, in the business section? Each one of those opportunities can be more valuable or less valuable depending upon what you're really trying to accomplish. Well, I think we're at 45 minutes. My email is on here. I certainly would welcome any additional questions. You can hit me at chad@turnitup.marketing, and want to thank Craft Beer Professionals for having me, and all of the sponsors for helping make this possible. Thanks for doing your thing, Craft Beer. We really appreciate it.